The morning sky above New Jeju Colony blazed orange and pink as the twin suns rose over the mountains. Captain Ji-won Park stood at the observation deck of the command center, sipping her coffee and watching the peaceful settlement come to life. Below, the colonists moved about their daily routines, tending to crops and maintaining equipment. It was a quiet morning like many others. Then the sky exploded with fire. A massive object streaked across the heavens, trailing smoke and debris. The ship was enormous, easily 3 times larger than any human vessel. Its hull gleamed like black metal, but strange patterns pulsed along its surface with a cold blue light. The alien craft wobbled through the air, clearly damaged and out of control. "Captain Park to all stations," Ji-won spoke into her communicator. "We have an unidentified vessel in distress. All emergency teams prepare for possible crash response." Dr. Hana Kim rushed into the command center, her medical bag already slung over her shoulder. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and steady hands, known throughout the colony for her skill and determination. "Where is it heading?" she asked. "The northern mountains," replied Engineer Sujin Choi from her console. "Impact in approximately 2 minutes." They watched through the reinforced windows as the alien ship crashed into the rocky peaks with a thunderous boom that shook the entire colony. A pillar of smoke rose from the crash site, dark against the morning sky. "I'm taking a rescue team," Ji-won announced, grabbing her equipment. "Hana, you're with me. This could be first contact. Or it could be hostile," warned Commander Unisong, the colony administrator. "We should follow protocols and wait for backup." "Someone might be dying up there," Hana said firmly. "Medical emergency takes priority over politics." Within 30 minutes, their hover transport was racing toward the crash site. Nurse Minho Lee sat beside Hana, checking medical supplies. The young man was nervous but dedicated, always ready to help where needed. Behind them, 6 security personnel led by Captain Park scanned the terrain ahead. The crash site was worse than they expected. The alien vessel had carved a deep groove through the mountainside before coming to rest against a massive boulder. The ship's hull was cracked open like an egg, revealing strange technology within. Glowing fluids leaked from broken conduits, and the air shimmered with heat. "Life signs detected," announced Sujin, reading her scanner. "One survivor, approximately 50 meters inside the wreckage." They approached carefully, weapons ready but not aimed. The interior of the ship was like nothing they had ever seen. The walls curved in organic patterns, and bioluminescent strips provided dim lighting. Everything seemed grown rather than built, as if the ship itself was alive. They found him in what appeared to be the bridge. The alien was enormous, nearly 7 feet tall and powerfully built. His skin was covered in scales that looked like polished, black stone, each one catching the light. 2 wings were folded against his back, their membranes torn and bleeding. His face was distinctly reptilian but intelligent, with piercing golden eyes that tracked their movement. Strange patterns along his neck and arms pulsed with faint light, like a heartbeat made visible. He was clearly injured. Dark blood pooled beneath him, and one wing hung at an awkward angle. His breathing was labored, creating small puffs of vapor in the cool mountain air. But when he saw the humans approaching, he straightened with visible effort. "Stay back," the alien spoke, his voice deep and resonant. The words came through a translation device attached to his throat. "I require no assistance from your kind." Dr. Hana Kim stepped forward slowly, her hands visible and empty. "We're here to help. You're injured and need medical attention." The alien's eyes narrowed. "I am Krathvar of the Drakthari Empire. My wounds are minor. My people heal quickly and completely. Your primitive medicine would only hinder my recovery." Despite his words, Hana could see the truth. His scales had lost their luster in several places, indicating internal bleeding. The wing was clearly broken, and his breathing suggested possible lung damage. The bioluminescent patterns on his body flickered weakly, like dying lights. "Please," she said gently. "Let me at least stop the bleeding. You're losing a lot of blood." Krathavar pulled himself upright, wincing with the effort. "Blood loss is insignificant. The Drakthari are warriors born. We do not fall to such trifling injuries. I have survived battles that would destroy entire fleets of your vessels." Captain Jiwan stepped beside Hana. We mean no offense to you or your people, but you crashed on our world, and we have a duty to offer aid to anyone in distress. Your duty is noted and rejected, Krathvar replied coldly. I will rest here briefly, then repair my ship and depart. Your assistance is neither needed nor wanted. Hana noticed how he favored his left side and the way his hands trembled slightly. She had seen enough injuries to recognize someone in serious trouble, regardless of species. How long since you last ate or drank anything? Food and water are luxuries. A true warrior can survive on will alone for many cycles. But even as he spoke, Krathvar's voice grew slightly weaker. At least let us bring you some water, Minho offered. It costs you nothing to accept. The alien's golden eyes studied the young nurse. Water I will accept, nothing more, and do not mistake this for weakness or gratitude. As they established a basic camp around the crash site, Hana observed Krathvar carefully. He moved like someone in constant pain but trying to hide it. His pride was clearly important to him, but pride would not heal broken bones or internal injuries. Tell me about your people, she said while Minho set up a portable shelter. Are the Drakthari explorers like us? Explorers. Krathvar made a sound that might have been laughter. We are conquerors, the greatest warriors in the galaxy. For 1,000 years we have expanded our empire across the stars. Other races flee when they see our ships approaching. Then what brings you to our corner of space? His expression darkened. I was pursuing cowards who dared to raid our territory. My mate Velthara fell in the battle. I chased the survivors here, but my ship was damaged in their final, desperate attack. Hana heard the pain in his voice when he mentioned his mate. This explained much about his current state. Grief could affect healing in many species, including humans. Perhaps it was the same for his people. As the day wore on, she continued to watch him. Krathvar refused all medical aid but accepted small amounts of water and food. He spoke of his empire and his people's great victories, but Hana noticed how often he touched his side where she suspected internal bleeding was worsening. The bioluminescent patterns on his body continued to fade, and she began to understand they might be more than just decoration. They could be indicators of health, growing dimmer as his condition deteriorated. That evening, as they prepared to return to the colony, Hana made a decision. Captain, I want to stay here tonight, to monitor his condition. Doctor, he's refused treatment, Jiwan pointed out. He's also dying, Hana replied quietly, and he's too proud to admit it. If we leave him alone, he might not survive the night. Krathvar overheard their conversation. I will survive 1,000 such nights. Your concern is wasted on one of the Drakthari. But Hana noticed how he settled more carefully against the ship's hull, and how his breathing had become more shallow. Whatever was happening to him, it was getting worse. She would stay and watch. Pride might prevent him from accepting help, but it would not prevent her from offering it when the moment came. Something told her that moment would come sooner than the proud alien warrior expected. The first day of what would become an extraordinary encounter between species ended with a stubborn alien refusing help, and an equally stubborn human doctor, determined to provide it anyway. Neither could imagine how much both their worlds were about to change. 3 days had passed since the crash, and Dr. Hana Kim was growing more worried with each passing hour. She had remained at the crash site, setting up a small medical station in a portable shelter. Captain Jiwan Park visited twice daily with supplies and updates from the colony, but Krathvar continued to refuse any meaningful medical assistance. The alien warrior sat propped against his damaged ship, maintaining his proud posture despite obvious pain. His scales had dulled further, losing their mirror-like shine and taking on a gray tint that Hana found deeply concerning. The bioluminescent patterns along his neck and arms now flickered irregularly, like broken lights struggling to stay on. You are persistent for such a small creature, Krathvar observed as Hana approached with a bowl of warm broth. Most beings would have abandoned this pointless vigil by now. Most beings don't leave injured people to suffer alone, Hana replied, setting the bowl within his reach. You need nutrition. Your body is trying to heal itself. Krathvar glanced at the offering but made no move to take it. The Drakthari do not require constant feeding like lesser species. We can survive on stored energy for many cycles during battle campaigns. Hana had noticed he barely touched the food they brought, taking only sips of water when he thought no one was watching. His refusal to eat was clearly weakening him, but his pride seemed more important than survival. Tell me about these battle campaigns, she said, settling nearby with her medical scanner concealed in her lap. Your people must have interesting stories. Krathvar's golden eyes brightened slightly at the topic. We have conquered 17 star systems in my lifetime alone. The Drakthari fleet is feared across the galaxy. When our ships appear in a system, entire civilizations surrender rather than face our might. As he spoke, Hana discreetly took readings. His heart rate was elevated and irregular. Internal temperature was dropping. Most concerning, she detected unusual neural activity that suggested his brain was under significant stress. Your mate Velthara, Hana said carefully. She was a warrior too? The change in Krathvar was immediate. His whole body tensed and the flickering lights on his scales dimmed further. She was the greatest warrior of our generation. Faster than starlight, fiercer than solar storms. She had never been defeated in single combat. You loved her very much. Love is a weakness, Krathvar replied, but his voice caught slightly. Drakthari do not form emotional attachments. We choose battle partners for strategic advantage. Hana could see the lie in his expression. The pain there was not just physical. How long were you battle partners? 12 cycles. We fought side by side through the conquest of 4 star systems. His voice grew quieter. She never showed fear, never hesitated, never asked for help that she could not return threefold. She sounds remarkable. Her death must have been sudden. Krathvar was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. Not sudden enough. She began to change in the final cycle, growing slower, weaker. She said she was tired, that the lights in her mind were fading. I told her it was pre-battle nerves. Drakthari do not grow weak without reason. Hana felt a chill of understanding. What happened to her? The raiders we were pursuing set a trap. Velthara's reflexes were not what they once were. She took an energy blast meant for me. Krathvar's hands clenched into fists. She died in my arms, saying she was sorry for failing me. Sorry for becoming weak. Maybe she wasn't becoming weak, Hana suggested gently. Maybe she was sick. Impossible. Krathvar snapped, his voice stronger again. The Drakthari do not suffer from diseases of the mind or body. We are bred for perfection, selected for strength. Weakness is purged from our bloodlines. But even as he spoke, Hana noticed him wince and press a hand to his side. The gesture was unconscious, automatic. He was in more pain than he wanted to admit. Nurse Minho Lee arrived with the afternoon supply run, bringing fresh water and food supplies. The young man had become fascinated with their alien visitor, asking careful questions about Drakthari, culture and technology. Your ship is amazing, Minho said, examining the organic-looking hull. Is it grown or built? Both, Krathvar replied, seeming to welcome the distraction from darker topics. Our vessels are cultivated from specially modified organisms, then enhanced with technology. They respond to our thoughts and emotions, becoming extensions of ourselves. That's why it looks hurt, Minho observed. It's reacting to your condition. Krathvar looked sharply at the young nurse. What do you mean? The hull patterns. Minho pointed to sections where the ship's surface had lost its luster, matching the areas where Krathvar's own scales had dulled. They match your injuries exactly. The ship is reflecting your health. For the first time, Krathvar looked uncertain. He studied his ship's hull, then examined his own arms. The correlation was undeniable. Where his scales were gray and lifeless, the ship's surface was equally dull. Interesting observation, he said carefully. But meaningless. The ship requires repair, as do I. Both will heal with time. That evening, as Minho prepared to return to the colony, Hana pulled him aside. "Keep this between us," she said quietly, "but I think we're dealing with something more complex than physical injuries." "You mean psychological trauma?" "Maybe. Or maybe something we don't understand yet. His people's connection to their ships, the way his mate deteriorated before dying, his own condition now. There might be a pattern here." After Minho left, Hana continued her quiet vigil. Krathvar had accepted the broth earlier but barely touched it. She watched as he shifted position repeatedly, unable to find comfort. The tremor in his hands was more pronounced now, and his breathing had become shallow. "You're in pain," she said simply. "Pain is temporary. Honor is eternal." "What honor is there in dying needlessly?" Krathvar's eyes flashed with anger. "You understand nothing of Dracathari ways. We do not cling to life like frightened animals. Death in battle is glorious. Death from weakness is shameful. And what about death from stubbornness?" Before he could answer, Krathvar suddenly doubled over, a low groan escaping his throat. The bioluminescent patterns on his body flared brightly for a moment, then dimmed to almost nothing. He tried to straighten up but couldn't quite manage. Hana was beside him instantly, medical scanner in hand. "Let me help." "No," he gasped. "Cannot show weakness. Cannot dishonor Velthara's memory. She wouldn't want you to die. She died because she became weak. I will not follow her path." Hana realized then that his refusal of help wasn't just about pride. It was about guilt and fear. He believed that accepting aid would somehow make him like his mate in her final days, weak and vulnerable. In his mind, refusing help was the only way to honor her memory and prove he was still strong. But as she watched him struggle to remain upright, Hana knew they were running out of time. His condition was deteriorating faster now, and his body was fighting a battle it couldn't win alone. "Krathvar," she said softly, "sometimes the strongest thing a warrior can do is accept help so they can fight another day." He looked at her with pain-filled eyes, and for a moment she thought he might agree. But then his expression hardened again. "I am Drakthari. I do not need your help." As the night settled around them, Hana prepared for what she suspected would be a long and difficult vigil. The proud alien warrior was dying, and his stubborn denial was accelerating the process. She could only hope that when the moment came, his survival instinct would prove stronger than his pride. The second day of their encounter was ending, but the real battle was just beginning. Dr. Hana Kim could not sleep. She sat in her portable shelter staring at the medical readings she had gathered over the past 4 days. The data made no sense according to everything she knew about alien biology, but the pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. Krathvar lay unconscious near his ship, finally overcome by exhaustion and pain. His breathing was so shallow, she had to check repeatedly to make sure he was still alive. The bioluminescent patterns on his scales had dimmed to barely visible flickers like dying stars in a dark sky. She activated her secure communicator. "Sujin, I need you up here immediately. Bring the deep tissue scanner and the neural activity monitor." Engineer Sujin Choi's voice crackled through the device. "It's 3 in the morning, Hana. What's the emergency?" "I think I've discovered something that could change everything we know about the Drakthari, but I need better equipment to prove it." 2 hours later, Sujin arrived with the requested equipment and nurse Minho Lee, who had insisted on coming despite the early hour. They worked quietly to avoid waking Krathvar, setting up the advanced scanners around his unconscious form. "What are we looking for exactly?" Sujin whispered as she calibrated the neural monitor. "Something that should be impossible," Hana replied, studying the first readings. "According to these scans, his cellular structure is breaking down at the molecular level, but it's not random deterioration, it's following a very specific pattern. The deep tissue scanner revealed internal damage far worse than external injuries could explain. His organs were functioning at reduced capacity, his bone density was decreasing, and his blood chemistry showed markers of severe systemic stress. This looks like accelerated aging," Minho observed, checking the blood analysis. But he's not old, is he? That's not the strangest part, Hannah said, pointing to the neural activity readings. Look at his brain patterns. See these spikes in the emotional processing centers? They're happening every few minutes, even while he's unconscious. Sujin frowned at the data. It's like his brain is stuck in a trauma response loop. The neural pathways associated with grief and loss are hyperactive. Exactly. And here's what makes it impossible. Hannah pulled up a comparison chart. The cellular breakdown is directly linked to those neural spikes. Every time his brain processes the traumatic memories, his body deteriorates a little more. The three humans stared at the evidence in stunned silence. What they were seeing violated basic principles of biology. Emotions were psychological, not physical. They couldn't directly cause cellular damage. Unless, Hannah said slowly, we're dealing with a species that evolved differently than we assumed. She began connecting data points, building a theory that seemed incredible but fit all the evidence. What if the Drakthari have a direct neurobiological connection between emotional state and physical health? What if trauma and grief can literally kill them at the cellular level? That would explain why they're such fierce warriors, Sujin said, understanding dawning in her voice. They can't afford to feel loss or fear because it would physically destroy them. And it explains Velthara's decline, Minho added. She wasn't getting weak from battle fatigue. She was dying from accumulated trauma, probably from years of warfare and loss. Hannah felt a chill as the implications became clear. If this condition is common among their people, the entire Drakthari warrior culture might be a survival mechanism. They fight constantly, conquer other worlds, project strength and fearlessness because showing weakness or processing grief would kill them. She pulled up more data, cross-referencing Krathvar's symptoms with everything he had told them about his people. The pieces fit together like a horrifying puzzle. They're not natural conquerors, she whispered. They're a dying species using warfare to hide from a medical condition they don't understand. The scanner beeped, showing another neural spike followed by increased cellular breakdown. Krathvar's condition was accelerating. They had hours, maybe less, before the damage became irreversible. Can we treat it? Sujin asked. I don't know. The connection between his emotional state and physical health is unlike anything in human medicine. We'd need to address both the psychological trauma and the cellular damage simultaneously. What about his own people's medicine? Minho suggested. Maybe they have treatments we don't know about. I doubt it, Hannah said grimly. If they understood this condition, they wouldn't be living the way they do. Their entire culture is built around avoiding the very emotions that could heal them. She stood up. Decision made. We need to wake him up. He has to consent to treatment, and he needs to understand what's really happening to him and his people. He'll refuse, Sujin pointed out. His pride won't let him accept that his warrior culture is based on a medical condition. Then we'll have to convince him that accepting help isn't weakness, it's evolution. They carefully roused Krathvar from his unconscious state. His golden eyes opened slowly, unfocused and pain-filled. The proud warrior who had crashed 4 days ago was barely recognizable. His scales had lost almost all their luster, and the bioluminescent patterns were so dim they were nearly invisible. Doctor, he whispered, his voice barely audible. I think I may have miscalculated my recovery time. Hannah knelt beside him, her expression gentle but determined. Krathvar, I need to tell you something important about your condition, about what's really happening to you. She explained her findings as simply as possible, showing him the scan results and explaining the connection between his grief over Velthara and his physical deterioration. She told him about the pattern she had discovered, how his people's warrior culture might be a response to a species-wide medical crisis. Krathvar listened in silence, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You were saying that Velthara died not from enemy fire, but from sadness itself? I'm saying she died from a condition that your people have never recognized or treated. The enemy fire was just the final blow to someone already weakened by trauma. And I am dying from the same condition? Yes, but unlike Velthara, you don't have to face it alone. We can help you, If you'll let us. Krathvar's hands clenched weakly. If what you say is true, then everything I believe about my people, everything we have built our civilization upon, is a lie. Not a lie, Hana said softly. A misunderstanding. Your people are still brave and strong. But strength isn't about hiding from pain. Sometimes it's about facing it and healing from it. The alien warrior stared at the scan results, seeing his own death mapped out in precise detail. For the first time since they had met him, his pride seemed to crack. What would this treatment involve? He asked quietly. I don't know yet. This is beyond anything in human medicine. We'd be breaking new ground, trying to heal both your body and your emotional trauma at the same time. It could fail. And if I refuse treatment, you die. Probably within the next few hours. Krathvar closed his eyes, the weight of the decision pressing down on him like gravity from a collapsed star. Everything he had been taught, everything his people believed, told him to refuse help and die with honor. But Hana's words echoed in his mind. Sometimes strength is about facing pain and healing from it. When he opened his eyes again, there was something new there. Not surrender, but a different kind of courage. If you can save my life, he said slowly, perhaps I can save my people. Tell me what you need me to do. The discovery that would change two civilizations had been made. Now came the hardest part, proving that healing was possible, even for a warrior race that had forgotten how to grieve. Dr. Hana Kim worked frantically to prepare the experimental treatment, while Krathvar drifted in and out of consciousness. His agreement to accept help had come almost too late. The cellular breakdown was accelerating, and his vital signs were becoming increasingly unstable. Neural activity is spiking again, Nurse Minho Lee reported, monitoring the brain scanner. Every time he remembers something about Velthara, his condition gets worse. We need to address the psychological component. First, Hana said, adjusting the medical equipment engineer Sujin Choi had modified for Drakthari physiology. His body won't heal while his mind is trapped in this trauma loop. Captain Jiwon Park arrived with additional medical supplies and a worried expression. Command is asking for updates. They want to know if we're dealing with a potential biological threat. The only threat is to him, Hana replied. But what we learn here could help save his entire species. She turned back to Krathvar, who had regained consciousness but remained weak. His golden eyes tracked her movements, but she could see the pain and confusion there. Everything he had believed about himself and his people was crumbling. Krathvar, I need you to tell me more about Velthara's final days. What exactly happened to her before she died? The alien warrior's breathing became more labored at the mention of his mate. Why must we speak of this? She is gone. Dwelling on the past serves no purpose. It serves the purpose of saving your life, Hana said firmly, and possibly the lives of countless others of your kind. Please, I need to understand the progression of her condition. Krathvar was quiet for several minutes, the bioluminescent patterns on his scales flickering weakly. When he finally spoke, his voice was filled with reluctant pain. It began after the battle for the Kepler system. We had won a great victory, but many good warriors were lost. Velthara said she could not stop seeing their faces in her dreams. She began sleeping poorly, eating little. Did she talk about feeling sad or grieving? The Drakthari do not grieve, Krathvar said automatically, then paused. But she said her heart felt heavy. She said the lights inside her were growing dim, and she could not make them bright again. Hana exchanged glances with her team. The Kuri description matched perfectly with what they were observing in Krathvar himself. What did you do to help her? I told her to be strong. I reminded her that we were warriors, that the dead were honored by our continued victories. I thought she would recover her strength through battle and glory. But she didn't. No, she grew weaker with each passing cycle. Her reflexes slowed, her warrior instincts dulled. Other Drakthari began to notice. Some whispered that she had been cursed by the spirits of our enemies, and what did you believe? Krathvar's hands clenched into fists and his neural activity spiked on the monitors. I believed she was choosing weakness over strength. I thought she was abandoning her duties as a warrior and as my battle partner. I was angry with her. The admission seemed to tear at him physically. His breathing became more ragged and the dim lights on his scales flickered rapidly. I was angry, he repeated, his voice breaking. My mate was dying and I was angry at her for it. What kind of warrior, what kind of partner, becomes angry at someone for suffering? A confused and frightened one, Hana said gently. Someone who didn't understand what was happening or how to help. I failed her completely. In her final battle, when she needed me most, she was fighting not just our enemies but also the darkness in her own mind, and I had made that darkness worse with my anger and disappointment. The medical monitors showed dangerous spikes in all of Krathvar's vital signs. His confession was triggering a cascade of emotional and physical trauma that threatened to kill him on the spot. Krathvar, listen to me, Hana said urgently. Velthara's condition wasn't her fault and it wasn't yours. Neither of you understood what was happening. Your people's entire medical knowledge is missing this crucial piece. But I should have known. I should have helped her instead of judging her. How could you help with something you didn't know existed? Your whole culture teaches that emotional pain is weakness, that trauma should be ignored. You were following the only guidance you had, Sujin called out from her monitoring station. Hana, his cellular regeneration is completely shut down. If we don't start treatment immediately, we're going to lose him. But Hana knew that no medical treatment would work while Krathvar was drowning in guilt and self-blame. She had to break through the psychological barriers first. Krathvar, what would Velthara want for you right now? She would want me to be strong, to honor our people's ways. Are you sure? Think about who she really was, not what your warrior code says she should have been. What would the person who loved you want for you in this moment? Krathvar closed his eyes, and for the first time, he seemed to be considering Velthara as an individual, rather than as a Drakthari warrior. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. She always said I was too proud, too stubborn. She used to tell me that true strength sometimes meant knowing when to yield, when to accept help from others. And what is she telling you now? She is telling me, Krathvar's voice caught. She is telling me to live, to learn, to help our people understand what we have been doing wrong. The change on the monitors was immediate. His stress indicators began to decrease, and for the first time in days, his cellular regeneration showed signs of activity. That's it, Hana said, beginning the medical treatment. Hold on to that thought. Let her love for you and your love for your people guide you through this. The treatment was unlike anything she had ever attempted. Using modified human medical technology, she worked to repair the cellular damage while simultaneously helping Krathvar process his emotional trauma. It required him to remain conscious and actively participate in healing both his body and his mind. Tell me about the good times with Velthara, she instructed, as the medical scanners worked to rebuild his damaged tissue. Not the battles, or victories, but the quiet moments between you. We would fly together through the void between stars, Krathvar said, his voice growing stronger as he spoke. She was beautiful in the starlight, her scales reflecting the cosmic radiation like jewels. We would talk about the worlds we had seen, the wonders of the universe. As he shared positive memories, his vital signs continued to improve. The bioluminescent patterns on his body began to glow more brightly, responding to his improved emotional state. She had a laugh like music, he continued. Other warriors thought it was undignified, but I loved that sound. She laughed at my jokes, even the terrible ones. She sounds wonderful. She sounds like someone worth grieving for. Yes, Krathvar said, and this time the word carried acceptance rather than resistance. She was worth grieving for, and she would want me to grieve properly, to honor her memory by living fully rather than dying proudly. The treatment continued through the night. Slowly, carefully, Hana guided Krathvar through the process of accepting his loss while simultaneously healing his body. It was exhausting work for both of them, requiring constant monitoring and adjustment. As dawn broke over the mountains, Krathvar's condition had stabilized. The cellular breakdown had stopped, and his body was beginning to repair itself. More importantly, The terrible cycle of trauma and physical deterioration had been broken. "How do you feel?" Hana asked as she completed the final scan. Krathvar considered the question seriously. Different, sad but not dying from sadness. Grateful, which is a new experience for a Drakthari warrior. Gratitude isn't weakness. No, he agreed, looking at his hands where the bioluminescent patterns now glowed steadily. "I am beginning to understand that many things I thought were weakness may actually be strength in disguise." The confrontation with truth had been more dangerous than any battle, but they had both survived it. Now came the even greater challenge of sharing this knowledge with a warrior species that had spent centuries running from the very emotions that could heal them. The morning sun cast long shadows across the crash site as Dr. Hana Kim watched Krathvar attempt his first steps in nearly a week. The alien warrior moved carefully, testing his strength, but there was something fundamentally different about him now. The proud, rigid posture had been replaced by something more natural, more alive. "The treatment worked better than I hoped," she told Captain Jiwan Park, who had arrived with the daily supply run. "His cellular regeneration is functioning normally, and the psychological trauma loop has been broken." "He looks like a completely different being," Jiwan observed. "Those light patterns on his body are much brighter." "That's actually a health indicator," Hana explained. "The bioluminescence reflects his emotional and physical state. The brighter the patterns, the healthier he is." Krathvar approached them, moving with renewed strength but without his previous aggressive pride. "Dr. Kim, I owe you a debt I can never repay. You have given me more than my life back. You have given me understanding." "You don't owe me anything," Hana replied. "But I do need to ask you more questions about your people. If this condition is common among the Drakthari, we need to understand how widespread it is." They settled in the shade of his damaged ship, and Krathvar began to share information he had never considered significant before. "Now that I understand what to look for," he said thoughtfully, "I realized the signs were everywhere. Warriors who grew tired after long campaigns, who lost their fighting edge, who died in battles they should have survived easily. What happened to them? They were considered dishonored, weak. Some were exiled from the warrior caste. Others chose to die in hopeless battles rather than face shame. We called it battle fatigue, but it was something much deeper." Engineer Sujin Choi, who had been analyzing the ship's bioorganic systems, joined their conversation. "Your vessel is fascinating. It's not just connected to your physical health, but to your emotional state as well. When you were dying, it was dying with you." "All Drakthari technology is grown rather than built," Krathvar explained. "Our ships, weapons, even our cities are living organisms bonded to our neural patterns. They respond to our thoughts and feelings." "Which means your entire civilization is probably affected by this condition," Hana realized. "If your technology reflects your emotional state and your people are suppressing trauma and grief, your whole society must be operating at reduced capacity." Krathvar looked at his ship with new understanding. "That would explain why our expansion has slowed in recent decades, why our technology seems to be degenerating rather than advancing. We blamed it on weak leadership, but perhaps our leaders were simply sick." Nurse Minho Lee had been quietly monitoring Krathvar's vital signs throughout the conversation. "His neural patterns are completely different now," he reported. "The stress indicators that were constantly active before are now within normal ranges." "Because he's processed the trauma instead of suppressing it," Hana said. "The question is, can we scale this treatment to help others of his kind?" "That brings up another problem," Captain Jiwan interjected. "We're going to have company soon. Our long-range sensors detected a Drakthari fleet heading this way. They'll arrive within 2 days." Krathvar's expression grew serious. "They are coming for me. Standard protocol when a warrior goes missing. But they will not understand what has happened here. They will see my acceptance of help as ultimate dishonor, even if it saved your life, especially because it saved my life. In their understanding, I should have died rather than show weakness to aliens. My survival will be seen as proof of cowardice." Hana felt a chill of concern. What will they do? At best, they will exile me and erase my name from their records. At worst, they will execute me as an example to others who might consider accepting help from lesser species. Lesser species, Sujin repeated with a bitter laugh. We just saved your life with medicine your people don't understand, using technology that works better than anything in your arsenal. I know that, Krathvar said quietly. But my people do not. They see the universe in terms of strength and weakness, conquest, and surrender. The idea that another species could teach them something valuable is incomprehensible to them. Then we need to change their comprehension, Hana said firmly. When they arrive, you're going to help me demonstrate that healing isn't weakness, it's evolution. Over the next day, they worked together to prepare for the arrival of the Drakthari fleet. Hana documented every aspect of Krathvar's treatment, creating detailed medical records that proved the effectiveness of their approach. Sujin modified their communication equipment to interface with Drakthari technology, allowing them to share the data directly. Most importantly, they helped Krathvar prepare to face his own people as a changed being. The proud warrior who had crashed a week ago would never have considered challenging Drakthari orthodoxy, but the healed individual he had become understood that sometimes evolution required revolution. You're asking me to go against everything my people believe, he said as they reviewed their presentation, to tell them that our entire civilization is built on a misunderstanding. I'm asking you to save them, Hana replied, the same way we saved you. Your people are dying from a condition they don't understand, fighting wars to distract themselves from pain they refuse to acknowledge. How many more Veltharis will die before someone breaks the cycle? And what if they refuse to listen? What if they see this knowledge as blasphemy against our warrior traditions? Then at least we'll have tried, but I don't think they'll refuse, not when they see the proof standing right in front of them. She gestured to Krathvar himself. His transformation was undeniable. The dim, failing warrior who had refused help was gone, replaced by someone stronger, more vibrant, more truly alive than he had been in years. Look at yourself, she continued. You're not weaker because you accepted help and processed your grief. You're stronger, more complete, more capable of helping others. It is true, Krathvar admitted, examining his own hands where the bioluminescent patterns pulsed with steady, healthy light. I feel more like myself than I have since Velthara died. Not the self I was trying to be, but the self I actually am. That's what healing means, not just fixing what's broken, but becoming who you're meant to be. As the second day dawned, their sensors detected the arrival of the Drakthari fleet. 3 massive ships, even larger than Krathvar's vessel, descended from orbit and took positions around the colony. Their bioorganic hulls gleamed with patterns of blue and silver light, beautiful and intimidating. They're scanning us, Sujin reported, probably trying to determine if we're hostile. Open a communication channel, Hana instructed. It's time to find out if a proud warrior species can learn to accept that healing is not defeat. Krathvar stood beside her, no longer the broken refugee who had crashed on their world, but not quite the same proud warrior who had left his homeworld either. He had become something new, something that bridged the gap between Drakthari tradition and human innovation. My people, he said into the communicator, his voice carrying across space to the waiting fleet. I am Krathvar, and I am alive. I have much to teach you about what it truly means to be strong. The moment of truth had arrived. 2 civilizations were about to discover whether pride could evolve into wisdom, whether ancient traditions could adapt to new understanding, and whether the greatest victories sometimes required admitting that help from others was not surrender, but salvation. The silence that followed Krathvar's transmission seemed to stretch across space itself. Dr. Hana Kim watched the 3 Drakthari warships hover above the colony, their bioorganic hulls pulsing with complex patterns of light that she now understood were expressions of emotion and communication. They're responding, Engineer Sujin Choi announced from her communication station. Multiple ships, multiple voices, they sound confused. The main view screen activated, showing the interior of the lead vessel. 3 Drakthari stood in what appeared to be a command chamber, their scales gleaming with authority and their bioluminescent patterns displaying complex, agitated rhythms. The center figure was larger than the others, his scales bearing the scars of countless battles. "I am High Talon Morgeth of the 3rd Battle Fleet," the lead alien announced, his voice carrying the weight of command. "We have come to retrieve the remains of Krathvar, who was reported dead after pursuing enemy raiders to this system." "I am very much alive, High Talon," Krathvar replied, stepping into view. "As you can see." The reaction from the Drakthari commanders was immediate and intense. Their bioluminescent patterns flared brightly, and Hana could hear sharp intakes of breath. Clearly, Krathvar's transformed appearance was as shocking to them as it had been to the humans. "Impossible," one of the other commanders whispered. "Your ship was destroyed. Our sensors detected no life signs. My ship was damaged, not destroyed, and I was dying, not dead. These humans saved my life with medicine our people do not possess." High Talon Morgeth's expression grew dark. "You accepted help from aliens? You allowed lesser beings to see you weakened?" "I allowed wise beings to show me strength I did not know existed," Krathvar replied calmly. "And in doing so, I have discovered something that could save our entire people." Dr. Hana Kim stepped forward, her medical scanner and datapad in hand. "High Talon Morgeth, with respect, I need to show you something important about your people's health. A human presumes to lecture the Drakthari on our own biology." Morgeth's voice carried dangerous undertones. "A doctor presumes to share a medical discovery that could prevent the deaths of thousands of your warriors," Hana replied firmly, "including those standing in front of me right now." She activated her scanner, pointing it toward the view screen. Even at this distance, the modified sensors could detect basic biological signs from the Drakthari commanders. "All 3 of you are showing early signs of the same condition that nearly killed Krathvar. Elevated neural stress patterns, irregular, bioluminescent rhythms, and cellular degradation markers that indicate psychological trauma affecting physical health." The commanders exchanged glances, their light patterns showing confusion and concern. "You're saying we're sick?" one of them asked. "I'm saying you're carrying emotional wounds that are slowly killing you, just as they killed countless warriors before you. Just as they would have killed Krathvar if we hadn't developed a treatment." High Talon Morgeth studied Krathvar more carefully, noting details he had missed in his initial shock. "You do appear different, stronger, but not in the way of traditional warrior strength." "I am stronger because I am whole," Krathvar explained. "Dr. Kim helped me understand that the death of my mate Velthera was not a failure of strength, but a medical condition our people have never recognized. The guilt and grief I carried were destroying me from within, just as they destroyed her." "Velthera died in glorious battle," Morgeth protested. "Velthara died from accumulated trauma that weakened her until she could no longer fight effectively. The enemy fire that killed her was simply the final blow to someone already dying from emotional wounds we didn't know how to heal." Captain Jiwon Park joined the conversation, adding her perspective as a military officer. "High Talon, we've all lost people in combat. The question is whether we learn from those losses or let them destroy us. Your warrior culture is built on strength, but what strength is there in dying from treatable conditions?" Suddenly, alarms began sounding on the Drakthari ships. One of the commanders who had been listening to the conversation swayed on his feet, his bioluminescent patterns flickering erratically. "Commander Velkoth," Morgeth called out in alarm. The affected commander collapsed, his light patterns dimming rapidly in a pattern that was becoming tragically familiar to the humans. "He's having the same crisis Krathvar experienced," Hana said urgently. "The emotional stress of learning about this condition has triggered an acute episode. We need to beam him down immediately for treatment. Our healers can tend to him," Morgeth insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. "Your healers don't understand this condition," Krathvar said bluntly. "They will tell him to be strong, to ignore his pain, to honor the dead through continued warfare. And he will die, just as Velthara died, just as I almost died." Another alarm sounded. The 3rd commander was now showing signs of distress, his breathing labored and his scales losing their luster. 2 warriors down in as many minutes, Nurse Minho Lee observed grimly. How many more are there on your ships who are walking on the edge of this condition? High Talon Morgeth looked at his failing officers, then back at Krathvar's healthy, vibrant appearance. The evidence was becoming impossible to ignore. What would this treatment involve? He asked reluctantly. Transport your affected warriors to our medical facility, Hana replied. We'll treat them the same way we treated Krathvar, addressing both the physical symptoms and the psychological trauma. It requires them to participate actively in their own healing. And what do you want in return for this aid? Nothing, Hana said simply. We're doctors. We help people who are sick, regardless of species or politics. The answer seemed to stun the Drakthari leader. He stared at her for a long moment, then at his dying officers, then at Krathvar's transformed presence. This goes against everything we have been taught about strength and independence. So did accepting fire from our ancestors, Krathvar replied. So did developing language or agriculture or space travel. Every advance in civilization requires abandoning old beliefs for better ones. Within hours, the Colonial Medical Facility had been transformed into an emergency treatment center. Commander Velkoth and 2 other critically affected Drakthari warriors were brought down from the fleet, their condition severe but not hopeless. Dr. Hana Kim worked alongside High Talon Morgeth, teaching him the treatment protocol while simultaneously administering it. The proud military leader proved to be a quick learner, his warrior pragmatism adapting to this new form of battle against an invisible enemy. The trauma patterns are remarkably similar across individuals, Hana observed as they worked. It suggests this condition affects most, if not all, of your people to some degree. How many of our warriors have we lost to this? Morgeth asked quietly, his own light patterns showing signs of the emotional processing that was part of healing. Probably thousands, Krathvar answered. Every warrior who grew slow and tired, every leader who lost their edge, every fighter who died in battles they should have won. We called it fate, but it was medical ignorance. As the treatments progressed, more Drakthari began to recover. Their transformations were as dramatic as Krathvar's had been, revealing vibrant, healthy individuals beneath the suppressed trauma and rigid pride. Commander Velkoth was the first to speak after his treatment. I have not felt this alive since before my first battle. I had forgotten what it was like to exist without constant pain. The pain was serving a purpose, Hana explained. Your emotional wounds were trying to heal naturally, but your culture taught you to ignore them. It's like having a broken bone that never sets properly because you keep walking on it. High Talon Morgeth underwent the treatment himself, despite his initial resistance. As the most senior warrior present, his transformation carried the greatest symbolic weight. When he emerged from the healing process, his bioluminescent patterns blazed with a brilliance that none of his subordinates had ever seen. I understand, now, he said, his voice carrying new depth and wisdom. We have been fighting the wrong war. We conquered worlds to prove our strength, but we were actually running from our own weakness. We expanded our empire to distract ourselves from the pain we refused to acknowledge. And now, Dr. Hana Kim asked, now we learn to fight the real enemy. The trauma, the grief, the emotional wounds that have been killing us for generations. We learn to heal instead of just conquering. Engineer Sujin Choi had been analyzing the recovered Drakthari technology throughout the treatments. High Talon, look at your ship's bioreadings now compared to when you arrived. The data was remarkable. The Drakthari vessels, which had arrived, with dulled hulls and sluggish responses, were now pulsing with vibrant energy. Their bioorganic systems were functioning at levels the warriors hadn't seen in decades. Our technology heals when we heal, Morgeth realized. Our ships, our weapons, our cities, they've all been operating at reduced capacity because we've been operating at reduced capacity. Which means your entire civilization could experience a renaissance, Captain Jiwan Park observed. Not through conquest, but through healing. The implications were staggering. A warrior culture that had spent centuries expanding through the galaxy to avoid dealing with trauma could now turn that same determination toward genuine growth and development. We need to return to our homeworld, Morgeth decided. Our people must know about this discovery. Our healers must learn these techniques. We want to send medical teams with you, Hana offered. Human doctors working alongside Drakthari healers to develop better treatments, to train your people in recognizing and addressing this condition. You would do this freely, with no territorial demands or tributes? We would do it because... It's right, she replied simply. Because healing people is what doctors do regardless of species. Krathvar stepped forward, addressing his commander directly. High Talon, I request permission to remain here as an ambassador. These humans have given us more than medicine. They've given us a new understanding of what strength really means. I want to help build a bridge between our peoples. Granted, Morgeth replied without hesitation. You have become something new, Krathvar, not just a warrior, but a healer yourself. Your mate Velthera would be proud. For the first time, since her death, Krathvar smiled at the mention of Velthara's name. Yes, she would be. She always said I was too stubborn to learn from others. She would find it amusing that it took nearly dying for me to discover wisdom. As the Drakthari fleet prepared to depart with their human medical advisors, Dr. Hana Kim stood with Krathvar watching the preparations. The alien warrior who had crashed on their world a week ago as a proud, dying refugee was now a healthy ambassador representing a new chapter in interspecies relations. Do you think your people will accept this change? She asked. Some will. Resist, he admitted. Change is difficult for any culture, especially one built on traditions as old as ours. But the evidence is undeniable. When warriors see their comrades transformed from dying to thriving, when they experience healing themselves, resistance becomes impossible. And if some still refuse, then they will continue to die needlessly while their people evolve beyond them. Evolution does not wait for the stubborn to catch up. 6 months later, the first joint human Drakthari medical facility opened on New Jeju. Dr. Hana Kim found herself leading a team of both human and alien healers, working together to treat a condition that had nearly driven an entire species to extinction. Commander Yuna Song visited the facility regularly, marveling at the changes. When that ship crashed, we thought we were dealing with a simple rescue mission. We had no idea we were about to revolutionize interstellar medicine. The best discoveries are often accidental, Hana replied, watching through the windows as human and Drakthari medical students worked side by side. We just tried to help one injured person. Everything else grew from that simple act of compassion. Krathvar had become the facility's most effective counselor, helping newly arrived Drakthari understand that accepting help was not surrender but evolution. His own transformation served as living proof that healing was possible. Dr. Kim, he said during one of their regular consultations, I want to tell you something Velthera used to say. She believed that the strongest warriors were not those who never fell, but those who fell and chose to rise again. She sounds like she was very wise. She was, and she would have loved seeing our peoples working together like this. She always said the universe was too vast and beautiful for any one species to understand it alone. The story that had begun with a proud alien warrior refusing help from lesser beings had become something far greater. It had become a testament to the power of compassion over pride, healing over warfare, and cooperation over conquest. In the end, the wounded alien dragon had not just been saved by human medicine. He had become the bridge that connected two civilizations, proving that sometimes the greatest victories were won not through strength, but through the wisdom to accept help when it was needed. The bioluminescent patterns on Krathvar's scales pulsed steadily as he worked, no longer dim with suppressed trauma but bright with genuine health and purpose. He had learned that true strength was not the absence of pain, but the courage to heal from it. And in teaching his people that same lesson, he had helped both species discover that the universe was indeed too vast and beautiful for anyone to face alone.